first chill of October had just begun to bite at the edges of our little town of Havenwood, nestled deep in the Pennsylvania countryside. The leaves were ablaze with color, a vibrant, fleeting beauty that mirrored, ironically, the deceptive facade of my marriage. My name is Alaric, and I'm 44 years old, a software engineer. I loved my job, the intricate dance of code, the satisfaction of building something from nothing. It was a stark contrast to the crumbling edifice of my personal life. My wife Brianna was a kindergarten teacher, a profession that always seemed at odds with the growing iciness in her eyes. We'd been married for 15 years, a milestone that now felt like a cruel joke. We had two children, 8-year-old Finn and 6-year-old Saoirse, bright, energetic kids who deserved a world of happiness, a world I was failing to provide. The first crack in our foundation appeared subtly, almost imperceptibly. It started with Brianna working late more often. Parent-teacher conferences, she'd say, her voice flat, devoid of the warmth it once held. I didn't question it at first. I trusted her implicitly. Trust, I would soon learn, was a luxury I could no longer afford. The late nights bled into weekends. She began taking solo trips to visit her ailing aunt in Philadelphia, a 3-hour drive away. I offered to go with her to help with the driving, to offer support, but she always refused, her reasons flimsy and unconvincing. "She's very particular about who she has around," she'd say, avoiding my gaze. Then came the phone. A new phone, a sleek, expensive model she claimed was for work. She guarded it fiercely, never leaving it unattended, always locking it with a complex password I didn't know. She'd clutch it to her chest when she thought I was near, her eyes darting around nervously like a trapped animal. The final straw, the moment the first tendrils of suspicion truly took root, came during Finn's soccer game. Brianna had promised to be there, had even marked it on the calendar, but when the game started, her seat remained empty. I tried calling her, but her phone went straight to voicemail. "The person you are trying to reach is unavailable," a robotic voice echoed in my ear, a stark metaphor for our relationship. She finally arrived halfway through the second half, her face flushed, her hair slightly disheveled. "Sorry I'm late," she said, her voice breathless. "I got held up at school." Something was off. Her excuses were becoming increasingly transparent, her lies increasingly clumsy. I could feel it in my gut, a cold, sickening dread that something was terribly wrong. I tried to push it aside, to dismiss it as paranoia, as the anxieties of a middle-aged man facing the slow erosion of his life. But the feeling persisted, gnawing at me, refusing to be ignored. That night, after the kids were asleep, I decided to do something I never thought I'd do. I snooped. I waited until Brianna was asleep, her breathing heavy and rhythmic, then carefully retrieved her phone from her nightstand. My heart pounded in my chest, a drumbeat of guilt and fear. I knew I was crossing a line, violating her privacy, but the need to know, the desperate desire to confirm or deny my suspicions was overwhelming. It took me a while to crack the password. She'd used a combination of numbers and symbols that seemed random at first, but then I recognized it. Finn's birthday, rearranged. A cruel irony, using our son's birthday to protect her secrets. Once inside, I went straight to her messages. There were dozens of them, from a number I didn't recognize. My hands trembled as I scrolled through the thread, my eyes scanning the words, the reality of my worst fears slowly solidifying into a cold, hard truth. The messages were explicit, filled with lust and longing. They spoke of stolen moments, of secret rendezvous, of a passion that was clearly not directed at me. The sender was a man named Gideon, a name that would forever be etched in my memory as the architect of my heartbreak. "I can't stop thinking about you," one message read. "I need you. I want you. Meet me at the old mill tomorrow night," another said. 9 o'clock. Don't be late." I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. The air was sucked out of my lungs, leaving me gasping for breath. My vision blurred, the words on the screen swimming before my eyes. I scrolled further, my stomach churning with each new revelation. There were pictures, too. Pictures of Brianna and Gideon, kissing, embracing, their bodies intertwined in a way that was both intimate and repulsive. I felt a wave of nausea wash over me. I stumbled to the bathroom and vomited, the contents of my stomach a physical manifestation of the poison that was now coursing through my veins. I spent the rest of the night pacing the floor, my mind racing, my emotions in turmoil. Anger, betrayal, sadness, confusion, they all swirled within me, a toxic cocktail of despair. How could she do this to me? To us? To our children? I thought of all the times she'd lied to me, all the excuses she'd made, all the subtle signs I'd ignored. It all made sense now, the pieces of the puzzle finally falling into place, revealing a picture of deception and betrayal that was far more devastating than I could have ever imagined. I knew I couldn't stay in that house, not for another minute. I packed a bag, grabbed my keys, and drove aimlessly through the night, the winding country roads a reflection of the tangled mess my life had become. I ended up at a motel on the outskirts of town, a cheap, run-down place that offered nothing but anonymity and a temporary escape from the pain. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, the image of Brianna and Gideon seared into my brain. I didn't sleep. I couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw their faces, heard their voices, felt the sting of their betrayal. By morning, I had made a decision. I couldn't let them get away with this. I couldn't let them destroy my life without a fight. I needed to confront them, to expose their lies, to reclaim my dignity. I drove back to Havenwood, my heart pounding with a mixture of anger and resolve. I went straight to Brianna's school, waited for her outside her classroom. When she emerged, her face lit up with a smile that quickly faded when she saw me. "Alaric, what are you doing here?" she asked, her voice tight. "We need to talk," I said, my voice low and dangerous. I led her to my car, drove us to a secluded spot in the woods, a place where we used to come for picnics, a place that now felt tainted by her betrayal. "I know," I said, my voice trembling with emotion. "I know about you and Gideon." Her face paled. "What are you talking about?" she stammered, her eyes darting around nervously. I pulled out her phone, showed her the messages, the pictures. Her denial crumbled, replaced by a look of shame and regret. "Alaric," she began, but I cut her off. "How could you do this to me?" I demanded, my voice rising. "How could you betray me like this? After everything we've been through?" She started to cry, her tears a pathetic attempt to manipulate me, to elicit my sympathy. "I don't know," she sobbed. "It just happened. I didn't mean for it to go this far." "Mean for it to go this far?" I repeated, incredulous. "You were having an affair, Brianna. You were sleeping with another man. How much further did you think it could go?" She had no answer. She just sat there weeping, her face buried in her hands. "I want you to leave," I said, my voice cold and hard. "I want you out of my house, out of my life. I'm filing for divorce." She looked up at me, her eyes filled with panic. "Alaric, please," she begged. "Don't do this. We can work through this. I promise I'll end it with Gideon. I'll do anything." "It's too late," I said. "You've broken my trust, Brianna. You've destroyed our marriage. There's no going back." I drove her back to town, dropped her off at a bus stop, watched as she disappeared into the crowd. Then I turned my attention to Gideon. I knew he worked at a local construction company. I drove there, waited for him to emerge. When he did, I confronted him. I didn't hit him, didn't yell at him. I simply told him that I knew about the affair, that I was divorcing Brianna, and that I held him responsible for the destruction of my family. He tried to deny it at first, but when I showed him the messages, the pictures, he broke down. He apologized, begged for forgiveness, claimed that he was in love with Brianna. I didn't care about his excuses. I didn't care about his feelings. I only cared about the pain he had caused me, the pain he had inflicted on my children. I left him standing there, his face etched with shame and regret. I knew that my confrontation wouldn't undo the damage, wouldn't erase the pain, but it was a small measure of justice, a small victory in a war that I was determined to win. The divorce was messy, acrimonious. Brianna fought me every step of the way, trying to get as much money as possible, trying to paint me as the villain, as the reason for her infidelity. But I had the evidence. I had the messages, the pictures, the truth. And in the end, the truth prevailed. I got custody of the children. Brianna was granted visitation rights, but she rarely exercised them. She was too busy with Gideon, too busy trying to rebuild her life, a life that she had shattered with her own hands. It wasn't easy. The first few months were a blur of tears and recriminations. Finn and Saoirse were confused, angry, heartbroken. They missed their mother, but they also sensed her betrayal, her abandonment. I did my best to comfort them, to reassure them, to provide them with the love and stability they needed. I became a single father, a role that was both challenging and rewarding. I learned to cook, to clean, to do laundry, to braid hair, to navigate the complex world of children's emotions. I became a soccer coach, a Cub Scout leader, a volunteer at their school. Slowly, gradually, we began to heal. We built a new life, a life that was different but not necessarily worse than the one we had lost. I eventually started dating again. I met a wonderful woman named Isolde, a kind, compassionate, intelligent woman who understood my pain, who respected my boundaries, who loved my children as if they were her own. We got married 2 years later, in a small, intimate ceremony surrounded by our family and friends. It was a day of joy and celebration, a day that marked the beginning of a new chapter in my life. Brianna and Gideon, on the other hand, did not fare so well. Their relationship quickly soured, the initial passion fading into resentment and recrimination. Gideon's wife, upon learning of the affair, divorced him, taking half of his assets and leaving him with nothing. Brianna lost her job at the school, her reputation tarnished by the scandal. She struggled to find work to make ends meet. She ended up moving to Philadelphia, living in a small, cramped apartment, alone and isolated. I heard through the grapevine that she regretted her decision, that she missed her children, that she longed for the life she had thrown away. But it was too late. The consequences of her actions had caught up with her, leaving her to face the wreckage of her choices. I, on the other hand, had found happiness again. I had rebuilt my life, stronger and more resilient than before. I had learned a valuable lesson about trust, about betrayal, about the importance of forgiveness. But I had also learned that some wounds never fully heal, that some betrayals are too deep to forget. And I knew that I would carry the scars of Brianna's infidelity with me for the rest of my life. Years later, I found myself reflecting on the whole ordeal. It was a painful chapter for sure, but it had also taught me resilience. I realized that betrayal, while devastating, doesn't have to define you. It can break you, yes, but it can also forge you into something stronger, something more aware. My children, Finn and Saoirse, were thriving, and my new marriage was a testament to the possibility of finding love again, even after the deepest hurt. Brianna's choices had led her down a different path, one filled with regret and loneliness. And while I wouldn't wish that on anyone, I also couldn't deny the sense of justice in it all. Karma, perhaps, had a way of balancing the scales. My story is a reminder that life can throw unexpected curveballs. It's how we choose to respond that truly matters. I chose to rise above the ashes of betrayal, to build a new life filled with love, laughter, and unwavering commitment to my children. And in the end, that's what truly mattered. And so, dear listener, remember that even in the darkest of times, hope remains. Betrayal can wound, but it doesn't have to define you. Choose strength, choose resilience, and never give up on the possibility of finding happiness again. Your story is still being written, and you have the power to shape its ending.